Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last part of our two-day summit on entrepreneurship. So today, here with me, I'm very happy to present Marc-Lionel Gâteau and Vincent Violin that will be here for the roundtable for this afternoon. So let's start with Marc-Lionel. So you are the founder of MLG Group, creator of French Village in 2016 at CES Las Vegas, which very quickly became the Village Francophone, the most important French-speaking collective intelligence program. In 2019, with 90 countries and 35 regions, you launched My Global Village with networks and entrepreneurs from other linguistic platforms like German, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and all this to decipher global trends and innovations. Can you please tell us about your work and what is the Village Francophone and My Global Village, please?
All right, thank you, Anna. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting audience. Hi, guys. It's a tough time because normally it's time to make a nap after the lunch, so I'll make my bets not to make you asleep in a while. So, yeah, I founded Village Francophone and My Global Village after a simple reason. I have just, when we design, I was not the only one to design the project, but when we start our project, we have seen that as we usually have our zone of comfort, when we are on a show, we never know, and I think it can be useful for students. You're young, you're shy, you do not even know how to get connected. But the problem is that when you're getting old like me, it's still the same. And when we were in Las Vegas in about 6 years right now, we had a lot of French-speaking people. We started by being the French village, le village des Français from the start. And we see that there was top decision maker within the CS. We will meeting up between the LA, and we say, okay, to just have an appointment with that person in France, I will need 6 months to find the right connection. And there were hundreds of people, and we were incredibly surprised because there were not a conversion point for all the French-speaking people. First year, so okay, it's a very nice guy. Where can we meet tonight? So we say, okay, let's try to meet up in such a bar, but it was crazy. The bar were privatized, it was closed. No one was meeting up, and we were extremely frustrated. So we say, okay, why don't we define a specific spot, an hotel? There's plenty and quite fun in Vegas. So we have chosen one not too fun, otherwise it would have been difficult to meet up. And so we said, okay, if it's going to be this one, it was the first, it was the Hotel Paris, because we were the French village. It was funny with an artificial Eiffel Tower, with artificial French food, not the same, the one we have in Paris. For the food, it's better sticking up in Europe than going to Vegas. And so the success was extremely quick. Because, of course, when you say, okay, let's meet up in the morning from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, you're going to say, oh, it's hard, 7 o'clock. But when you come to Europe and you fly over to Vegas, of course, it's very easy because with 9 years of jet lag, at 4 o'clock in the morning, you are already in a very good mood. So 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, everything is closed in Vegas. And the French say, okay, let's start to organize pitching session between those that are selling techs and those that are buying, distributing tech. It has started like this, and so okay, I could take all the time and all the conference, so I will stop quite quickly. But so it started like that. So we start to define a conversion point, and then we say, okay, why don't we visit Vegas, the show, on verticalized groups. So we say, okay, let's organize a collective work group, for instance, for organizing a guided tour on health, on smart cities, on smart mobilities, to understand, not to be with my specific firm, my specific territories. Let's visit it in mixing up by point of interest. And then we organize evening parties. And 5 years after, from one event, now we are covering 53 events on 4 continents. We have a Village Francophone and My Global Village in Hannover Messe, in, I don't know, Festival de Cannes, all the big events where tech providers can meet up tech buyers. That's how it started. And what can I say? Maybe I'll go on later on, but it's a very nice adventure. So 53 events, 100 connected territories. That's an interesting point. Maybe I'll talk about that later. Is that during COVID, we have learned to work with connected territories. And we were also connected on the Tours Amont ski recently. It was a huge and very nice event, thanks to La Sorbonne and to our partners. And that's it. Maybe okay.
We are actually going to speak a little bit later about the changes that COVID brought. Just one question, just to finish. The students and young entrepreneurs are also welcome in the village?
In fact, you ignore your power. You like Peter Parker because before he was he was attacked by the radioactive spider. When you are young, when you are ready to work, you work for cheap. So people say, okay, he's very smart. He knows the power. He has power because he knows something that I, entrepreneur, don't know. And he's ready to work extremely hard. And most of the time, entrepreneurs are shy. They ignore that. Of course, we want you because there has never been as much money to invest in young entrepreneurs, in young startups. The first things you have to know is how to get connected to those networks, and that's what we're trying to do and to help you. So you are welcome. If you have a early stage project, welcome to my global village.
Thank you. So now we are going to talk a little bit about Vincent. Sorry. You have almost 15 years of experience in business strategy, digital transformation, entrepreneurship, innovation, and events as a consultant and entrepreneur. With a solid international background also. You are also part of the founding team of Viva Technology. So can you tell us a little bit more about your work and also what is Viva Tech?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm very happy to be here with you guys. Of course, open to questions after that, I imagine, Anna. The first thing, before mentioning what is Viva Tech, maybe just to complete what was said during the presentation about Vegas. You know, it's full, just because it was not said, it's full of slot machines, you know, les machines à sous. And something that I saw at Vegas is that it's not only full with slot machines, but also with free alcohol when you go to the slot machines. So it explains a lot about what was said during the introduction regarding the fact that people are more than open to business, especially during the afternoon and the nights. Mentioned, yes, I'm part of the co-founders of Viva Tech, as you said, back then in 2016. To be very simple, maybe some of you would be happy if it's the case, know about Viva Tech, but some of you not know about it. Our ambition back then in 2016 was, and it's so connected to what you said, because we are aligned on the vision. Maybe two things to explain. First, yes, we thought that maybe France was a bit of a, not a global village, but a village français, and we were a bit apart from the globalization. We are a big country, of course, we are a big GDP number and digit, but we were not really connected like Anglo-Saxon countries, for instance. For cultural reasons, for not only cultural reasons, but a lot of reasons. And we decided to fund something that is, and now is really, the biggest tech event in Europe. As you know, we have big competitors, maybe the names will ring a bell to you guys, like Web Summit, we were talking about that just a few minutes ago, Slush. Of course, a part of Europe, we have big names just like CES. The idea was to really create in France, as a European hub, not only French hub, but European hub, a big tech event where all the big names, but also the big, let's say, important people could take part of it, startups, corporates, investors, VCs, and also all the people that are taking part of this, let's say, new world about technology. So that's what we did. We have now 5 editions. The last one, of course, in 2020, we have to consult. 2021, we we're back in June. It's a 4 days event. It's a physical event at the beginning. Now it's not only physical, we will be back on that in your next questions, Anna. It's a hybrid event where you can take part in person and also, of course, hybridly.
Students present here with us, but we also have some people at home that are listening to you, so we say hi to everyone right there. And so the VivaTech is also for young entrepreneurs. They can participate also in the show.
Definitely. So yes, of course, the first, let's say, milestone and the first way we decided to build it is to build a relationship between corporates. We have big names, for instance, at VivaTech. I can only mention a few of them. It can be LVMH, it can be Huawei, it can be Microsoft. The big corporates, the C-levels, as we call them, and it's important for young entrepreneurs and young leaders because what they want to see, the people they want to meet, is the big names. Not only the big names in terms of media, but also the people that decide in the industry and decide in the let's say corporate way. They can decide of a lot of strategic issues. So what we do is we try to connect them with everybody. But of course, in this everybody thing, there is something that is really important to us and is really keen to develop at VivaTech, is to connect them with the young entrepreneurs. We do that in 20 places, 20 venues at VivaTech. I can develop on that, elaborate a little bit later. And what we do is to really have a specific relationship between the young leaders, the students as well, especially the last day, on Saturday, for instance, where they can have a richful and really interesting relationship with the corporates, of course. I can elaborate after that on this aspect.
Thank you. So we are now here present for an international student entrepreneurship summit. Well, not the same scale as both of the events we've discussed, but what do you think is the importance of being present in this kind of events for students and young entrepreneurs?
Okay. Okay. Yes. We can do both. One answer. From my experience, and it's really apart from my VivaTech experience, as a student, as a former student, it's a long time ago now, but as a teacher as well, as a lecturer and everything, I think events, and you mentioned events in your question, are still definitely the place where you can meet people that are interesting to you. And you know, there is a very simple way to understand that. It's what we live during COVID. Everybody, I think it's maybe it's not scientific, maybe it's more something that comes from what you feel and from what I felt. But during the 16 up to 18 months where we could not meet people, just like here today, physically in person at events, we were not happy. And if, in my case, I was not happy, not only because it's part of my business, to be honest, of course it was counting, but also because it was really something that was missing. So really, just to introduce what you will say, I think it's really, we saw by something that is more than important to us, that we need physical and in-person encounters in life. Simple as that.
Yeah. And during COVID, we'll talk about that later, but during COVID, you young students go on in being digitalized and have digitalized relation. But when you go on into the real life, into a real event, and you have in front of you real people, and that you have to sell your project, because that's what's going to happen. You have to find partners, you have to find clients, you have to find money. In every time, you have to sell something. And the more, why you should be everywhere, small events, big events, international events, local, even, you know, Americans are quite fond of elevator pitch. You meet someone in one lift, and this person can be the ride that will help you grow. you have to train yourself. And it's true that those events gathered on the same spot, on the same place, most of the time the people you have to convince, the people you have to, that will be your first partner, first client. So of course there's no questions. You have to be there, and you are, some of you are millennials, probably most of you, I don't know. So you probably think that web technology can help you spread out your solution. It can work. It has works obviously for the founder of Facebook and some other people like that. But except if you definitely want to work into web tech, all project has to be done in the real life. And the real life, it's an event. Independently of the site of the events, you have to go on it and to stick with it every year, anytime you can go.
And exactly, I'm completely aligned on that. And if I can add two things, maybe one advice and something from my experience, maybe beginning by the experience. This year, for instance, at Viva we decided to have startups, of course, both present. Some of them were physically present. For instance, you can even imagine what I call the LVMH booth, 30 startups physically present in person. Some of them were the CEOs of the startups, for instance, during the 4 days. But at the same time, we also had people connected online. And to be completely honest, and I can say it without any fear, of course, the experience for the people who were there in Paris during the 4 days, they all said it was better. It doesn't mean that it was not interesting for the people to be connected. Most of them, I had a lot of feedback. You can imagine we do a lot of feedbacks back then in June, and then during all the months from June to now in November. But they all said, well, it's difficult to enrich our experience where we are only online. Something that is also interesting is that it's complicated to be focused online during the same amount of time. That's what I want to say. The same amount of time as in person. And even in person, it's not easy, right? When you arrive at 8 and then you have to go at 6 and you meet, as you said very pertinently, a lot of people, and you have to pitch your project. But still, it's easier to pitch and to be pertinent during 4, 5, up to 6, 8 hours in person if you compare to an online experience. That was maybe the first thing. And the second, just very quickly, but it's just about let's say the advice. As you mentioned, it's very pertinent. From what I see now, because the question was, why are you present today? What is it important in a way to be present as an event today? I think and it's still linked to the physical presence, which is a very happy medium between two things, preparation and inspiration. You have to prepare when you come to events like that, as you said, unless you are a Mark Zuckerberg, as you say. Of course, if you are a very... and even, well, it's another question, but about the metaverse. But anyway, and even if you are someone who is very famous, you should prepare. You should prepare to meet people. You should know who you will meet, what they've done. Of course, for instance, if you want to meet and greet with these people, with this person, and especially if you are looking for a job, for instance, it's always really important to prepare. And at the same time, what is really interesting, just like we did today during the 20 minutes, it's a very good example. It's also something that is not only prepared. It opens to some inspiration, let's say, not like in the internet. We could talk. We didn't know each other, to be honest, but he knew about, I can say that, about Viva, and I knew, of course, about what you've done. And we talk about that, and that's really, really something that is really pleasant about what we do in our businesses. You understand?
Yeah, and keep in mind that it's not always the most accurate events that would be the best. For instance, I have one of my startups which was in mobility area. It came to CES in this year, and then it moved up to Festival de Cannes. Don't ask me why it came to my global village in Festival de Cannes, but it was an extraordinary opportunity to meet up with an investor. I don't know if it was wandering around on his yacht and having a, but that's how it happened. So of course you've got extremely targeted event, and that's the one you have to go, but you can also find anytime, any moment. So being oriented to go on events is a mind spirit, and events can be 2 nights in a bar when you meet up someone, or a very international events is what's happening in the real life. So keep in mind that you have to pitch to sell your project. When I say sell, it's a noble word. That it's not I sell, he doesn't want my product, I force him. No, I try to understand what's an investor, client, or distributor what's his need, and I simply explain him why my project will be a good solution for him to make money, to find clients, to be more happy, but to understand what's going on in the mind of the people you meet up everywhere.
So keep open-minded and take all the opportunities you can get. Just a little bit to summarize all the great discussion we have about this question. So we can discuss more directly the subject of this roundtable. What is the place of digital solutions in internationalization? So we can start now with Martin.
For me, a simple answer, my youngest son is 9 years old. For him is, of course, totally digitalized. When he plays, for instance, on its PlayStation, he's connected with people all over the world. So when you are digitalized and you are working your client's community, you automatically, at least in your own language sphere, if you're French, it's not a problem. Someone is in Kuala Lumpur, I don't know, is French, is talk to you, that's obvious. So there is no barrier. When you are digitalized, you are international. If you start to keep that, why will you stop developing your project, at least in one single country? The first things, my personal feelings, that's why we have created 1 year after the French village, le village francophone. It was not because we were very strategic, but simply because people came up and say, okay, I am a Québécois, I am a Belgium, I'm living in Singapore, but I'm connected with the French tech community. So obviously we automatically, without efforts, became international. And of course, we have the chance, thanks to those strong events in Viva Tech, in CS, to meet up, it creates strong relation. But how can you keep contact, strong contact between two events, two operations, two opportunity to connect for a business project? Digitalization is an extraordinary way. So don't ask questions. During COVID, we became very poor because we were not able to go onto event, to fly over into another continent. But the size of my global village tripled its size, because we were all stressed, we were all locked up, and so okay, let's try to see how we can work together, or we can we move from about 25 connected territories to more than 100, and to 9 countries to 19 countries. So that's a good example to internationals, thanks to the digitalization. But now that we're starting over to meet up again in the real life, these links are of course very useful.
Yes, I can complete maybe with 2 things. It's a very, very open question, to be honest, and very wide question. So in any case, and I suppose that the audience will ask questions if you have concrete, I don't know, questions about that, we would be more than happy to answer. Maybe 2 things to see how digital solutions are relevant in the context of internationalizations. The first is an anecdote, and maybe the second is more about an analysis. I try. The first is during 4 years at Viva Tech. It's from our experience. We built up something. It was a tool, what we called the Viva Tech Tour. So it is similar to what you do, guys, but for Viva Tech. What it means. We went, for instance, to accelerators, incubators all over the world. And just like this, with audiences all over the world, we try to connect, especially with startups. So I could go, me and my team, for instance, to New York, to Singapore, also in Europe, and see people, maybe sometimes not big audiences, but very qualitative audiences, like 50 up to 100 people, trying to connect with them and explain what was Vivatech and what it was about, why it was interesting for them to connect with the community of Vivatech and with the Vivatech event in June itself. Of course, you can imagine in 2020, something that we could even not imagine in all the guesses that we could do in March, maybe even in February. I was back from Africa. It was stopped in 1 week. You can imagine. I'm sorry to mention that. It's so important to say. We could not imagine it could be stopped, not in 1 year or because the time was changing, but in 1 week with something very, very important, the COVID crisis. So we had to reinvent itself, and I was talking to Valerie, for instance, a lot about that. We had to reinvent it 100%. So we decided to do a digital magazine. When I say magazine, it's like a TV broadcast, but for startups. Of course, at the beginning, it was not that simple. It was not our job. We didn't know about that, but still moving a little, hiring the good people. At the end, during the 2021 and 2022 now, during, let's say, the last year, we did more than 15 broadcasts, between 40 minutes up to 50 minutes each, you know, just like Journal Télévisé here in France, but for the startups, dedicated to the startups. We startups themselves. What I'm saying is that you can, of course, and that crisis showed at a level that we could not even imagine, in a way that we could not even imagine, that you can really move from a physical, in-person world to a digital world, definitely. You can prove not only that you can have real value in the way you move, in the way you pivot, I would say startups, pivot your model to this digital model. And not only that, that's my anecdote to finish. Of course, it allows you to have more originality and really more, you're even more open-minded. An example, I was dedicated this broadcast that I was talking to you, this pivot, to the Nordics. Nordics, as you may know, are countries that are really startup driven, really startup driven, really investors driven. We have a lot of examples of very great startups coming from the Nordics countries in Europe. And at some point, I reminded about some guy I met in Stockholm years ago. His name is Tyler Corley. He's not from the Nordics, he's an American. And I called him and I said, do you want to be in this broadcast? It's very new. The idea is really to promote during the crisis this ecosystem. Is not even, it doesn't have the nationality of one of those countries. It's not even a link that he has. He's still American. He said in 15 minutes, yes. In 20 minutes, we had a Zoom with my team involved, with his team involved, and then 20 minutes of a great conversation embedded in the program. Who could do that before the crisis, to be honest? No one. I mean, we could, but we didn't. So it's really important to mention this anecdote, apart from what I tried to do during this introduction, to say that really in the internationalization process that we see, digital solutions are key. And maybe my advice would be to be very focused as a student, but also for us, what are the good solutions, how we can use it, what is useful, and what can bring value when it comes to use these solutions.
Thank you. So you have already discussed a little bit, each one of you, about reinvention of the time of COVID, but would you like to talk a little bit more about the challenges, the digital impacts that you've done, bring to your works?
Okay, it's quite simple. I am an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for about 25 years. And so it was in the event industry. So when during 18 months, you learn that everything you sell, you cannot deliver it, you just learn that you're gonna be poor. You're gonna lose everything. That's what's happened to most of events industry. Of course, we have been helped by the government. It's true, and we have really good help. But from March to about June 1919, we have not that kind of information. And so we were not obliged to reinvent because we were smarter, but just to survive. That's the first point. So when you are an entrepreneur, you know that every time you can lose everything and you are ready to rebuild. But this crisis was an extraordinary opportunity to select in organization those who were able to reinvent themselves, to those that were waiting that the crisis end over. And some of them died because they are still waiting that everything's go back to normal. And we now all know that no one will be back to normal. Everything has become phygital, because we don't pronounce that words, but we are now all phygital. We are living real life experience, but are connected in the same time. We are not connected because of but most of the time we could have type up. And so we are now phygital, so you have to reinvent totally your process, your organization, to end up thinking about your local area, but about your community, your language sphere, and so on and so on. So yes, of course, we have to reinvent not some things, but everything in the process. And that's why I think now we are growing over again quite quickly, even if the business worldwide is quite good right now. But reinventing, when you say entrepreneur, and especially young, if you are not agile, stop trying to be an entrepreneur. Go to work for big company. They will pay you a good salary because they are missing up top talents like you. But if you want to create your own business, get ready to lose everything one day and to reinvent everything the other day.
Yeah, I'm completely aligned on that. You know, just to be maybe as an introduction about this question, there is an effect both called in physics and in economics, called the hysteresis. The idea is that when a solid is compacted, it doesn't come to its fitting place at the beginning in the same time that it was compacted. So for instance, if you destroy a solid, it will take maybe 5 minutes. And to refine its place, it will take 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's really well documented. It's true in physics. It's also true with some differences, of course, and discrepancies in economics, for instance, when an economy is falling down. Why I'm saying that? Because you mentioned something that is really true. At the beginning of the crisis, especially in events, because we are both coming from events, we may have thought that it would be back in 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I remember some discussions that we had, even me, of course. Well, you know, maybe it will end up in June, it will end up in July. And then you realize it's not only this. It's not only a health crisis. That's all about the COVID situation. It's also a cultural, economic, and global crisis, let's say. So when you come to understand that, you realize that you will have a challenge is, of course, to move your model. And in this occasion, I want to say 2 things. Regarding Vivatech, maybe some of you, as I said at the beginning, knew about Vivatech. And maybe some of you did not. But if I re-explain, the paradox was, as you mentioned, but I will be very straightforward on this, very straightforward. We are an event dedicated to tech, to digital transformation, to everything that is, let's say, digital. But in 2019, before the crisis, what were we concretely? A physical event. A physical event. Something that is not digitalized. Let's say 10% digitalized. Everything was physical, everything was in person, and everything was linked to the capacity to connect to gather with people in a physical place. So you can imagine how the challenge was big when it came to our minds that, well, of course, we were dedicated to tech and to digital transformation, but we were not concretely, basically, digital. So we had to hybrid everything that we've done. And that's my second and final point. How we did this. Well, you have to think about everything that was physical. For instance, at Vivatech, we are at Porte de Versailles. It's 40,000, 45,000 even, I think, square meters. So it's pretty big. And you have several venues, several places. I mentioned the LVMH lab, but you will also have some different places, the Google, for instance, place. You will have, of course, venues where people can discuss, lounges, stuff like this. At every moment that we decided to hybrid our experience, and that was a challenge, we said, okay, how we could do that also, not only, but also digitally. You have a lunch with investors. It was physical, only physical. People meet, two people at the same room at the same time. How do you do that at the same moment, but online? How can you do that with all the places in your room, all the places at the Porte de Versailles, first? And second, how do you not duplicate the experience? Because it's very important. We realize that you can duplicate something, but it will not interest the people. They will still come to the physical event. It's obvious when it comes to think about it. If the LVMH lab is physically very interesting, they will always and forever prefer to come to the LVMH lab. But if you at the same time invent an original experience to a e-lab of the LVMH, something that is different, but that belongs to the whole LVMH experience, then they will come also to the LVMH e-lab. That's not simple, to be honest, but that's what we tried to do during the last 2 years.
Perfect, thank you. So I would like to, our speakers have agreed to have some questions from the public. So if you are interested to ask one question, take advantage because they are here today to answer all your questions. Is there any question from the audience? Well.
The first one is always the most difficult.
Yeah.
Like that.
Don't be shy.
So you emphasized on the importance of physical events, and as a young entrepreneur, young students, are we aware of these events? Where can we find the location? How can we get invited, or how can we attend to these events? Do you have any advices on that?
Yes, the first thing is that in Paris we are quite we're quite happy because every week you got physical events in every area, and lucky most of them are European leading events. So that's the first advice I could give you, is to look at the agenda of Porte de Versailles, those events, and you will find treasure for the development of your business. Of course, if you have projects abroad and you want to connect with Barcelona Smart Cities, a web summit in Lisbon, when you're student especially, it's fun because I think that a long time ago, when I was student, I started to fund myself to, it was not only to go into the event, but also to visit the city around. But I've discovered that was money to help students if you have a project, a current project, to help to finance those travel. So I don't know if it still exists, but I won't see why it has disappeared. But I think that if around your specific project you can gather a group of students and try to develop pan-European projects, or of course international projects, I think that you can find money, private or public, to help you go into those specific events. If you maybe on a specific project you have idea, let's talk about it. I think we can help.
Thank you very much.
I'm more than aligned with what was said. Maybe three things very shortly. One of them, I already said it, but in my opinion, it's very important. Do not hesitate to prepare. Prepare is not being like to have a calendar with every 15 minutes you have something to do, but you can prepare, for instance, about the people you want to meet. Everybody wants to be important, so if you know what the person that you want to meet did in his life, his projects, what he's doing in the company, it will be always important for him, and of course you will be considered for that. Honestly, maybe 10% of the time, because he's not aware of that, he will not consider, but really most of the time people consider the time that you really dedicated to the fact that you said, okay, I'm going to Groupe La Poste, I'm going to LVMH, I know what this person, the CDO, the CMO, did in his life and in the group. Second thing, give you some time, as it was said. If you come, for instance, to Vivatech, I see that a lot. The temptation, and it's pretty normal, is to come, let's say, 1 hour, 2 hours. But really, when it comes to realizing, you realize that it's not enough. You need a little bit of time. You have to prepare, but you have to let you time as well. Just let you time to go to the venues, to see, well, people are not always free, you know? So you need to have this time, to let you some time. And one day at the end, if you have to, for instance, to be hired, what is it? It's so important. So you can come for half a day or for a long day as well. It's not that bad. It can be interesting. And the last and final point would be, apart from this preparation and this capacity to let you some time, I think you should, I mentioned the word inspiration, to be inspired just a few moments ago. You should always mix it with some keynotes and some fireside, let's say. I'm not mentioning that it's a fireside today, but it's always a respiration. You can go 15 minutes. I do that myself, for instance, after some 1, 2, 3 hours meetings, some moment of inspiration. Okay, some guy will talk about the AI. Maybe I will not be interested. Maybe I will be very, very interested. And in any case, this 50 minutes inspiration will be important for my brain. Well, that's maybe some 3 advices that I would give you.
Thank you very much.
Another question from the public?
Okay, so what would you advise for young entrepreneurs who wants to scale up internationally? Is the website, building a website or being in the digital field, is enough to scale up, or would you recommend to contact local people in the different countries, and what would you advise?
You mentioned scale up. My question would be, what do you want to say about scaling up? Are you at the moment
developing in other countries?
Okay. If you're a full technology or digitalized or web project, I think that starting over with digitalized leverage is the right choice, because those are the cheapest one. But most of the projects right now deal with local people, local project. I don't know if you're selling health tech, food tech, tech for cities, tech for mobilities. Of course, you have to develop your own distributor, integrate a network. That will be the only way to scale up. I don't talk about the scaling up in finding monies, but finding true clients, true markets, true. Of course, you will have to develop your project with local people, and in that case, of course, you can start to connect digitally. But in the end, you have to jump into a plane and go and to see people and to understand the culture, the people. That takes time, but that's the only one way from my point of view. Except if, of course, you have a 100% digitalized project. But for the rest, There's no option, no other option.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely aligned. Maybe I could just give an example to complete, but it's definitely aligned with what was said. If you think about BlaBlaCar, maybe it's the most epiphanic, mediatic startup, scale-up, a unicorn now, French unicorn with Frédéric Mazella as a founder in France and in Europe. What they did is all about what they call acqui-hiring, which means when we acquire a startup, another startup that does the same thing as us, we also acquire the people, the founders of the startup. Why? Because of what was said. We need to have the cultural background, the cultural pattern of a country to understand how we can sell, how we can work, and how we can develop in a country. That's what they did. It's only an example. I know an example is not everything, but it's a very pertinent, I think, and interesting example. Generally, people don't know about that. And Frédéric says it a lot, by the way, but it's really important to fit in the country codes of and the cultural code of the zone where you want to sell.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for the presentation, first of all. So my first question would be, what would be the different aspects and key factors to pay attention to spot, to determine whether your company should scale up right now or not? Because truth is, you can go straight up in the wall if you're not doing it at the right moment, and you can put your company in bankruptcy. A lot of examples of companies messing up their scaling up and destroying their company in the few first years after doing it. What would be the different, the key important factors to spot, and what would be the mistakes to avoid? Thank you.
My personal feeling is that the first factor is like exactly in the cinema industries, the chance. Because you talk about BlaBlaCar, I attend, I'm very old right now, and I attend to the born of BlaBlaCar when they were free into their startups, and at the same time, there was 20 similar projects. Let's say the truth. So why BlaBlaCar emerged? No one can logically tell you it happens like this, and it was BlaBlaCar, not the only one. But what you have to keep in mind is that exactly when you are a super gifted sportman or super gifted actor, when the champs come, you have to get ready. And when the money comes to help you accelerate, you have to keep in mind that it will need lots of work, lots of organizations, lots of, and you have to make the right show. So the chance that has a unicorn right now is that in the beginning they were lucky, just lucky. And it's sad because maybe your project is twice more brilliant than another one, and the other one could succeed. And we European, we African, we Australian, and we have a big problems. Is that in comparison to the same project in English-speaking countries or Chinese-speaking countries, when we see the size of the language market, we are already challenger. So we have to be twice, 3 times better than the other one when we have a project. You have to keep that in mind. We are definitely challenger because you are German, you come from Africa, you come from France, because our language is not widespread, and so we have to adapt it. But that's my personal feeling. I don't know if it's that's what I've seen now for about 20 years in contact with startups. I don't know if it's a good advice, but get ready and hope that the chance will come.
I'm aligned again. Maybe just to complete about your question. Yes, luck is definitely key, and that's something controversial because, as you said, when you say that, it opens a wide range of questions, issues for everyone, right? I was lucky, I was not lucky. It's so important in someone's life. Still, maybe to complete what was said, two things that maybe you don't, I don't mean you, I don't know you, but maybe people don't have in mind at the beginning. It's also a lot about execution. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, startups in my activities at Vivatech, and also apart from Vivatech, because I have some activities apart from Vivatech that have very, very good ideas, as it was mentioned, but you have to execute them in any way, and that's the complicated part. And the people that are, for instance, tenacious, someone's stubborn, I don't mean they have an advantage, but sometimes, sorry, it's really a good quality to be engaged and to try to do, and to try to find the way to do the things, to execute them, first thing. And the second thing that I wanted to mention about that, regarding the key aspect, not only about the execution, and not only about the luck that was mentioned, it's also about, well, there is a word that is really out of fashion now, and I can assume it is about its benchmark. You know, 10 years ago in all the business schools, we did a benchmark. But it's out of fashion, but the idea is good. It's always interesting. When you look at the great successes in the business, it's sometimes, to me, every time, but sometimes about people that are obsessed with what the competitors are doing. What are they doing? Good, very good, bad, in the middle. What are they doing? I see in the very great entrepreneurs this capacity to see always what the people are doing. What are they doing? What is interesting in what they are doing? Why are they doing this? So maybe execution and benchmark are two little advices that I wanted to give you.
Thank you both. One last question from the audience. Is there
Hi, everyone. So my question is just related with what you just said now about obsessing over the competition. Sorry, I'm not used to speaking, so
No,
But-
don't worry.
I always have this tremble in my voice, so I have to. So I worked for a few years at Amazon, and Amazon, they have these business principles, we will call them. And one of them is, he says, Jeff Bezos, he says, in order to succeed, do not obsess over the competition, but obsess over your customer. So my question is, because this came up in one of the earlier masterclass this morning, about also obsessing over the competition. So I just want to know, like, how do you find, what is the middle line then, the difference between obsessing over the competition or obsessing over the customer?
That's a very good question, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find the answer, but it's a very good question.
I have a third option, because when I look around the new model and you think about the future, what will be the best challenge? Will it be to be obsessed by the competition, by the customer, or by the state of the world? And the problem is that now the world is getting bad and bad. Now countries are building barriers. You see lots of money in military. So is that the words we are considering to build up? So I think that if you're thinking about building a money-making but also a tech-for-good business, maybe that will be the third way. We have seen that Amazon, obsessed by the customers, has turned us all into living database. They know everything. When we go to the toilet in the coming years, we're going to have a camera to see what we're doing inside the toilet. It's crazy now. We have all became database for those GAFA. It's starting to be a big problem, but We are just from the start. When you talk about competition, of course, competition has been useful, but you see that now you have very, very strong new business model, collaborative platform, collective intelligence, local process to produce things, goods, and to relocalize, to turn wasted into a cryptocurrency. You've got extraordinary, interesting new model that are not coming from traditional economic model, but from new economic model. I'm not talking to you about philosophy. I'm talking to you about how you will probably build up an interesting model. So that's my answer. Don't concentrate on old model, only focus on competition and customer, but think that's stronger than customer is human, and what is their new model targeting simply human from all about the planet.
Just to be a little controversial and to finish up, he gave you the answer by saying there was no choice. He gave the choice. It's all about consumers at the end. I don't mean you said the contrary, of course, but user experience, capacity to focus on what the customers expect. And you mentioned Amazon. It's very interesting when you look at what even Jeff Bezos said. You remember, he said, "What I want to do." I think it's a quotation from the 90s, so it's really old. But he said, "If I dream, what I really want to do is to have someone receiving the package that he bought in my website in 1 minute." You know. So that's really what it's not a joke. It's why he did what he did at Amazon, with all the innuendos and controversies that of course he creates when it comes to think about the model of Amazon. But yes, I think your question, I said, is really pertinent, because I think the balance is evolving from strict competition, which is always important, of course, as we are in a liberal and capitalist society, to focusing on expectations from the public, from the audience, and of course the social media and the, let's say more globally, the user experience society is really focusing on that. So we should look at it and hear to it. You know, there is a word, and I will finish on that, which is growth hacking, you know, which was created in the startups 10 years ago. You now have growth hackers, that's the name, and they try to hack, as well, it's transparent, hack the growth in the startup. And what is their first jobs? Once I was like, to be honest, I'm just like you guys, you know, what do? I don't know what growth hackers does. 60% of the time I'm hearing about what the clients say, what they want to do, what they do when they come to the website, what they do when they come to the social media. That's your answer.
Thank you. So thank you all. Thank you for taking the risk and asking such a great question. And just to sum up, I would like to take some notes from what you've said. So be agile, think outside the box, take every opportunity that you can, because luck is in the middle, is a factor also. And you can take advantage of all the solutions that we have, the digital solutions that we have, but don't forget to participate in person, because that is also a factor, and that the connection is very important to develop your project and your business in the future. Would you like to have a last thought, or?
No, I think it was perfect.
Yeah,
it was a perfect sum up.
Thank you. So thank you all for participating. Thank you all at home also for seeing us, being with us today. We are going to continue with the masterclasses this afternoon, and I'd like to thank you very much. It was such a great pleasure to be with you in this roundtable. Thank you. A round of applause for our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.